Today, we're going to talk about this year's market condition, lessons learned, things that you can keep in mind, not just about this year, but also about historical days that will impact your financial decisions. We're going to take that information and we're going to put it into context so that you are much better prepared for 2023 and make intelligent financial decisions. Welcome back, and let's get started with our analysis. So we have this chart right here, and it contains historical data of the housing market, and it was pulled all the way from 2000 to 2021, and the data was actually provided by Zillow. For those who are actually interested in the story behind it and why I ended up doing that historical pull-up, feel free to check out this video right here that was actually released about a year ago. But for today's episode, we're going to focus on this, and what I want to do is to take this information and help you analyze a couple of key historical days, particularly the one related to the financial crisis in 2008, right? Why am I picking 2008? Because it was relatively the most recent one prior to the pandemic, of course, and that length of time will give us something more to grasp on and something more to analyze, okay? So what we're gonna do first is to take a look at the peak of the prices, because the peak of the housing market did happen prior to 2008. So when we look at the data from 2007, we can see here that the average house price over here in 2007 was somewhere around $217,000, right? So keep that number in mind. And at that point, a lot of people were complaining that the housing market was too expensive. There were a lot of people entering the market, getting access to reckless loans and stuff like that. But it was still a complaint that houses were still relatively expensive, right? So, be careful what you wish for, because the market correction did come in, and that's when we started seeing the housing prices go down in 2008. In fact, we went from an average of $217,000 for a house all the way down to, let's just pick June here, June 2008, just to find like mid-year, all the way down to $202,000. But for simplicity purposes, let's just round that up to $203,000, right? So what most people would have done at this point is to panic, right? And this is something I still remember vividly experiencing. A lot of people were panicking. You're crazy. Why are you even going into the real estate market? It's not worth it. Houses are losing value, yada, yada. But you know what? Some people did not let that noise or let that fear take over them. Were they afraid? I'm sure they were. But if you run the numbers right, and if you know that your calculations are correct, you as the intelligent investor would have made the move of going into that market and purchasing that property where those prices were actually going down, right? But the drama doesn't end there, right? Because there's always something, there's always a crisis, there's always something worse that could wind up happening. And the shift downwards continued to happen all the way down to 2011, when the average price of a property was somewhere around $167,000, right? Let's just round that up for simplicity purposes. At this point, people are still panicking. This is crazy. Why would you buy? Houses are still dropping. And maybe if I wait a little bit more, the houses are going to be cheaper, right? But the intelligent investor does not do that. They don't take advice from people who don't know what they're talking about, who are just basically given into fear. What they do is that, once again, they run the calculations, they run the numbers, and they make an informed decision based on the numbers that they're looking at. They don't let the emotions take control over them. Are they afraid? Of course they are, but they're making an informed decision and they're going in, right? And guess what happened after that? The market started taking off. So whoever stood there in 2011 waiting for the prices to continue to go down, what happens? They wind up not buying anything because they already realized that, the houses are more expensive. But because they already went through this whole psychological pattern in 2007 and 8, they have hopes that the market will eventually fall again. And maybe that will be the opportunity for them to go in and buy. And guess what happens according to this data? That never happened. It did not go down. In fact, after 2011, property prices started going all the way up, all the way until the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. So the pandemic was a relatively recent event, and I'm sure a lot of us remember the drama, the fear, the news, and all that ugly stuff that was basically being bombarded at us, whether we will consume information in YouTube or whether we will consume it in TV, it doesn't matter. The point is that everyone was competing for eyeballs, and none of that information that was fed to us was positive by any way or by any means. All we were consuming at the time was fear. And I want to make something clear here. There's nothing wrong with being afraid. In fact, being afraid is actually a good thing because it's what keeps you grounded, is what keeps you in check. Imagine if you were fearless, you'd be doing dumb stuff left and right, without even thinking about the consequences. But because you have the ability, or we all have the ability to feel fear, we consider the risk. We stop and think, okay, is this the right thing? Is this the wrong thing? Am I doing something right? And if you're afraid of a certain risk to happen, you look for ways to mitigate that risk. You look for ways to prevent that from happening or to find some type of solution in the event that that happens. But when you are paralyzed by fear, you're not going to go anywhere. And this is what happens with most people. Everyone was heavily consumed by fear in 2020 at the start of the pandemic, and they decided to do nothing, right? And rumor has it, don't buy a house, don't buy a house, don't buy any properties because the crisis is here, the pandemic is here, the stock market is falling. Mind you that the stock market is extremely volatile and the real estate market is not the same. The real estate market moves a lot more slower than the stock market. There is a reason for it because nobody can just increase and drop rent overnight because no one has the ability to pay for a rent that has increased overnight. No family in the world is going to be able to afford something like that. And therefore, the rental market and real estate in general moves a lot slower. And people fail to understand that because, again, everyone was waiting for another catastrophe like the one that happened in 2008 to repeat itself. But it's not the same thing because regulators learned their lesson. The banking institutions did learn their lessons. And if anything, they made lending a lot easier for people. The interest rates were lower. And what happens? Competition started flooding the markets. And then more and more people wanted to buy a house, driving the prices all the way up to 2021, which is the point and where I ended this graphic. And now that we look at this number and we bring it up to today's number, we're talking that the average house price is now worth $454,900. Who determines that? The market. Whoever is willing to pay that price, that's the new record the market is going to set. And whoever did not buy here or here or here because they let fear paralyze them is wishing they could turn back time to be able to enjoy the low price that you could have gotten here or here or here or here. But the truth is, you can't turn back time. You can't do anything. And complaining about it is not going to lead you anywhere. What you have to do is take action, as lame or simple as it sounds. Because taking action is the only thing that you can control. Look, you can't call the Fed and say, hey, lower the rates again so I could qualify for a 2% mortgage. And you can't call everyone in the market and say, well, bit lower because I don't want to pay this high premium for the property. No, you can't do that. What you can do is to just simply accept what's happening and try to figure out a way and how you can position yourself in a way that is financially feasible for you to be able to invest. If you happen to be here and you want to get here, what you need to do is to figure out a way to how to bridge the gap. If finances are an issue, then start with yourself. What is it that you're lacking? And it's okay. There's nothing wrong or shameful about being lacking of something. If we were all born with this knowledge, everyone in this world would be an investor. But the truth is that the majority of the investors out there, and myself included, we had to learn the information that we know today from someplace, from zero. And we all started from zero at some point in our lives. We weren't all born with money. So if finances are an issue, then analyze yourself and look where you were lacking this year. Is it because you didn't have a strong credit score? Or is it because you didn't have enough savings? Or if it because you didn't have access to funding for whatever reason? And then see what you can do about it rather than just, sitting down and complain and waiting for the world to change. Because sadly, the world is not going to change just because you disagree with it. I wish that could have happened and it would make my life a lot easier, but sadly, it doesn't have to happen. So you have to adapt. So if your credit score happens to be an issue and it's what's stopping you from investing, then just consider looking and analyzing, making a copy of your credit report, see where it's failing, making a phone call if necessary to any of the credit bureaus, or why not just buy a book on Amazon? And if you don't want to buy or spend anything on books, then just check out the educational content that's out there. It can be from our channel in NOVARISE, or it can be from any other channel out there who's teaching you how to improve your credit. Then after that, once you got your credit taken care of, then you move on to the next step. What is it? Is it financing? Is it savings? Figure out if there's a way for you to accumulate the money or the savings. But if you want to expedite that, there are ways to get financing in a very creative way. In our channel, we talk a lot about implementing credit cards as a way to get you that financing to buy real estate, to invest in real estate, or why not to even open up a business if necessary. There's no need to wait for tomorrow to get things done when you can implement that today, especially if you have the information. Because remember, information without action is nothing. Information without implementation leads to nothing. You have to use that information and be able to do something with it. And you are the only person who can do that. So please don't let another year go by without doing anything. You have seen so far that there's no such thing as the perfect condition. 2008 happened. Yeah, maybe the prices dropped, but maybe you lost your job. And that means you couldn't afford to buy a house anyways, because without a pay stub, most banks would not lend you. And then fast forward a couple of years, the interest rates were low, but then there's a complaint about prices being too high and wanting to wait for property prices to drop. And guess what? They did not drop. And now you were wishing you were able to take advantage of the low rates and the better pricing back then. But the reality is another one. Today, we're facing higher housing prices, and we're also facing higher interest rates. And it doesn't look like the Fed is going to stop raising interest rates anytime soon. And once again, there's nothing you can do to change that, but you can change yourself and you can change the way you look at things. And the beauty about everything is that nothing is forever. If you happen to run the numbers correctly and you found the property to be the ideal one for your investment based on numbers, based on location, and you were able to get the financing, just lock it in, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not the one paying for that. Your tenant is. And monitor the market, see what happens in a couple of years. Maybe the Fed will desire to lower the rate. And if that happens, then just simply go ahead and refinance. Pull the equity out of your property if you manage to amass some equity and refinance into a lower rate so you can lower the mortgage payments and increase the cash flow. So once again, don't leave for tomorrow what you can do today. It is time to get started to improve yourself, to create a version of yourself that it's evolving towards the better. And you can do that here at NOVARISE Invest by checking out any of our videos that have to do with credit, that have to do with how to buy a house, the steps that you could be taking to buy a house, so you can soak yourself with that information. And if you have seen all of our videos already and you're looking for ways to even expedite your learning even more, then you can sign up for this free webinar right here and learn the steps necessary for you to take the next step and become that real estate investor that you've always wanted to be. I will see you at the webinar. Take care. Bye-bye.